Same mothers tend to do that.
You're right. Same mothers tend to do. Okay, ready?
Push their son to come in.
In accordance with the openness of Local Bodies Regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. The recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use of and to speak clearly into the microphones at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking photographs. Start the meeting. I've got any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Worship. Apologies from councillors Ian Ridley, Richard Morris, Linda Broadley and Frank Broadley.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members will notice that Councillor Kaufman hasn't taken his deputy mayor this evening because he's feeling under the weather. And the mayor would like a member to be nominated to assist her during the conduct of the meeting. I'll pass it over back to the mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Kaufman, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to say apologies, Dean Gamble. Thank you.
Councillor Bolter raised his hand.
Councillor Bolter.
I ask that Mr. Carter be assistant for this evening.
A seconder?
We got a seconder?
I'll second that.
Lots of seconders. Looks like you. Thank you.
Just give me a chance.
Okay, we go on to our agenda item 3, declarations of interest. We got any? Councillor Lloydell?
Only from the item where it's dealing with members' allowances. To be consistent, I've always declared an interest in that because I know two of the independent panel members.
Okay. Oh, and Councillor Eaton.
Sorry, the same goes for me. I know two of the independent panel members as well.
Okay, can we note that, please? We move on to minutes of the previous meeting. We got anything? Any action arising from the previous minutes? Everybody happy that I sign?
Agree.
Okay, thank you. Any motions on notice?
None received, Your Worship.
Petitions, deputations and questions?
Okay, none received, Your Worship.
Okay. Mayor's announcement, it's been a busy year and we're still plugging on, but other than that, anything else? Deputy? There's nothing to say, okay. So we go on now to the leader's statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, this is my last statement, so I won't be brief. In May, it's 24 years since I was elected councillor. And my first electoral campaign was basically quite straightforward. Hello, how's your mother? Top and bottom of the voting sheet, because it really was quite that local at that point. I've been leader, I believe, for 17 years. And in that time, the world has changed pretty significantly. 17 years ago, there were local area agreements for literally every single thing we did. And if you weren't caught by 3.1.2, you were caught by 3.1.2 or 3 or 4 or whatever number it was. And we had full-time employees whose only job was to monitor local area agreements and the targets and the thought process behind it. 13 years ago, change, nice man called Eric Pickles turned up. Eric didn't believe in area agreements and effectively over a period of time wiped our lot out. And technically he gave local authorities freedom. And freedom's interesting because you can only have freedom to do what you are able to do. Now, yes, you can have freedom to act like a rational human being, but rationality includes your resources. And I'll come on to that in a moment. Resources are a major issue. In the last 10, 12 years, I think the start of what Eric did, actually I agreed with. And you will not find me on record as complaining about change or about having nothing in terms of money. I don't complain about it, I merely acknowledge the problems it will cause. What the government now has done has put us in a position where we have no money. We are, like many other councils, in significant trouble. We're not different from anybody else. We haven't done anything wrong. The world has changed, and that means that we as a council have changed. We are doing things now which we would have never have done. And interestingly, we're doing things for less money than we would ever have done. So there's no question. 10 years ago, our turnover was roughly £10 million. I always ignore the housing revenue accounts. It's not what people out there see. We have £10 million turnover, now it's 6.5. If you think any given organisation can remain the same with that level of change, you are barking mad. And barking probably are, dare I say it, that mad. The simple fact is we have changed so significantly. Now there are people, there are organisations in this council that have done rather well. If you have a lot of greenfield sites, it's nice to say brownfield, but most of these go on greenfield sites. And you can put up a lot of big sheds. You will gain lots of income. And I suspect that if you count one district in Leicestershire, the acreage of their sheds, it probably comes to greater than the acreages of this borough. So you have that's one way of raising money. The other way is to follow the government's ambition, which is to build houses. If you build houses, yes, you do get no house bonus and so on, and you get more council tax. However, you get more expenditure. You get more pressure on you. You do. Because clearly, these people want to be served and should be served the same as every other resident. Regrettably, we've in the situation where we have no sheds. What we have is more houses, which has more expenditure. So that 6.5 million actually is doing far more than it used to. So we have a problem. Of course, just after Christmas, we actually contacted our MP about that particular problem. I would like to tell you his reply. What he eventually did, apart from being silent, was to write to Michael Gove. He wrote an interesting letter. He actually, in some ways, said we are in trouble. We make no bones about that. And we've actually been open about that. The report we took through council says what level of trouble we're in. Interestingly, I'm told that some people think it was too strong. I don't think it was. Telling the truth is neither strong nor weak, it is simply the truth. point was that what Michael Gove was also told by Neil O'Brien was one of our problems is that we do not charge enough in terms of fees and charges. We don't. We bring in very little from fees and charges. The only major income we have is now car parking. And therefore, if Neil O'Brien is saying what I think he is, which is in his letter, and you can read it yourself, he's basically saying we need to charge our residents more. Now, you cannot charge them more on council tax because that's controlled by government. Therefore, the only place you can charge them is on fees and charges, which means that the government's policy, or as illustrated by Neil O'Brien, is to charge more for car parking. And let's be absolutely clear, both parties in this chamber this evening agreed with car parking charges, evidenced by the fact that the leader of the Conservatives seconded the motion to charge.
Yeah.
So there is no question. You cannot argue that that is not the settled will by this council. The level of car parking charges, on the other hand, is an open debate, and I would suggest that the cheapest car parking scheme in the county, and frankly, I suspect in the country, is not something that we should be anything other than proud of. Over the last 17 years, there are other things we need to think about. Have we achieved things? Yes, we have. We have 2 leisure centres which were redeveloped. One completely knocked down and rebuilt, the other one a swimming pool added. Interestingly, we brought them in on time and on budget. And despite what happened after once COVID hit, they were actually exceptionally successful. It's very difficult to plot in life for something like COVID. And I don't think anybody, in one sense, nobody did well, but nobody did badly, because we all coped. And I think that's the truth. But having said that, if you go and look, when it was announced that councils would provide support for people, I can't remember the numbers, but it was certainly in thousands that we telephoned. And I can say we, because I sat with a telephone on several mornings and afternoons, telephoning people early, before county were given the information. We started working on finding out who are residents who need support. We did it early. And I think that's something we should be amazingly proud of. I think there are many other things that we've done. South Wixton Park had lots of money spent on it. I can say that because I sat in the chair of DC when it was agreed that Tesco's could give us a couple of million to come. And it was all above board, all accounted for. But $1 million of that was spent on the park, so I have no problem with that. And there are many other things, but I'm not going to say, I'm not going to go through it because it's not right to. What I will do, because as I say, this is my last occasion, I need to put some thanks on record. And a few moments ago in the room, we were, there's a small presentation, and I made a few remarks, and I'll repeat some of that now. Good councils are run as partnerships. They're not run as dictatorships. They're not about one side having all of the right information. They're run as partnerships. Interestingly, they're run as partnerships between the officers and members, so they're also run as partnerships between members. In terms of the officers, I would very much like to put on record my thanks to not only the current cadre of officers in this council, but also all the previous cadre of officers who left on positive terms. There are one or two exceptions I may make, but generally speaking, all the people who have left, I would thank. And it's not easy. What we have to remember is what I've been through in terms of the changes for this council are also changes for our officers. And in a few cases, we've never managed to have to put into the public domain the fact that we were interestingly, slashing jobs. We've always done it controlled. We've always done it in a way that didn't put us into the mercury, saying how many people we're going to make redundant. But there have been people made redundant. There have been people taking voluntary redundancy. Unfortunately, if you go from 10 to 6.5 million, what else do you do? That is obvious. The vast majority of our expenditure is on people. So we have cut, we have made changes, and the bulk of that, we have to remember, is with our staff, our officers. So can I put on record my thanks to them? Can I put on record my thanks to members? It's interesting. I had a conversation with the then leader of the opposition, and at that point we had a scrutiny committee, and I was quite clear. Colin, if you can get a third of the candidates, you can have chairmanship of scrutiny. He didn't, therefore he never did, but I would have stuck by that. And actually, Colin, in my view, was one of the most effective councillors in this chamber. The fact that he was not in my party is actually irrelevant. He was effective because he asked the right question at the right time. And he gave support on the right question at the right time. And that is something we should all remember. It's not easy being in the leading group. It's not easy being in the other group for that matter. But the relationships you build up with each other are the relationships that push us forward. And I think that's something we need to remember. I would also like to thank all those councillors who are stepping down this year. I will exclude myself because I'm self-congratulatory and I don't do that. It's not an easy job being a councillor. And no matter what decisions we make, somebody will say it's wrong, and often loudly. Those people who don't think it's wrong don't say anything at all and often vote for you, so it's really quite complex. So you have to be careful and you have to have a backbone. However, can I thank all those people who are stepping down? It isn't for everyone being a councillor. And the only reason I'm retiring now is it's the right time. There is no underlying, I'm doing this, it's not. I'm 71 years of age on Sunday. My address is published and any gift is acceptable. I am 71 on Sunday. Do I wish to stand up here at 75? No. Therefore, this is the right time to go. There is no other logic to this. There is no underlying issue. So, can I thank all those that are retiring? Can I wish all those standing luck? May you all receive what you deserve. Thank you very much. I will take some questions.
Can I offer my thanks as well, John? That's goodness knows how many years. Right, anybody got any questions that they want to give to John?
No? Any questions?
No.
Dr. Charlesworth? You?
Thank you, Worship. My best wishes to John for the future, for his travels, and to Julia, of course. I can understand you wouldn't want to be here at 75 years of age. I think there is one who is still here at 75 years of age, but I won't mention Bill's name. There are a couple of questions, and I do agree with your sentiment actually about Colin. There was somebody who understood, like you say, asked the right questions, and I've got no respect and time for Colin. I do have a couple of questions though. When a politician crosses the floor to the Tory party and becomes the loudmouth and then doubts absolute nonsense and dribble, things he doesn't know anything about, does he not then lose all credibility and trust among the voters? My second question really is, this is a quote from a daily newspaper. I just wonder whether the leader, if you mentioned RMD, does the leader agree with this quote? An MP so beige, so junior, that not even his colleagues know he is working with them. At home he merges into the muted pastel paintwork, so much so that his family aren't always aware if he's there or not. So it's a wonder he even became a minister, given that few had ever seen him, let alone heard of him. But when this Tory government ricochets as often as it does, then almost everyone eventually gets to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Two questions, somewhat different. I also think it's sad when somebody crosses the floor. Not least of all, if they haven't actually made it pretty clear that they were unhappy before they did it. And I think that means that they're doing it for something only that they can explain. But the public, on the other hand, will feel they're doing it for self-interest. And I think that is exceptionally sad. I think it degrades and demeans politics and politicians. And I was never comfortable towards the end of Boris with the people defecting from this party. Because in the end, most of them are now no longer MPs. And I think the public quite often will share and express that view. Yeah. As for The Guardian, I will admit I do not read The Guardian. I was actually watching television the other day, and there's this health minister talking, and I will admit it took me 2 minutes to realise his name was Neil O'Brien. And if that is an indication, and I have met him a few times, that unfortunately the man is somewhat of a lightweight without gravitas, and I think that is a shame. And I think his support for Obion Wixton is probably even worse and even more of a shame. Thank you.
I think we've got one more question and then I'd like to move on from this subject, please. Thank you. Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also join Councillor Charles in thanking John and wishing him all the very best in his retirement, along with Julia. Your Worship, I would like to ask our leader, making work in the last few hours, would he be able to write to our MP and his team in this chamber and the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson? No. Liz Truss? No, I think it's Rishi Sunak. Sorry, there's been so many in the last 12 months, it's hard to keep up who's in charge of our country. So, will our leader write to them and ask them to apologise to the resident of this borough for their party's government for crashing the economy and fuelling the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War? And my second question is, John, will you agree with me that our resident in this borough deserve an administration which is hardworking and has more to offer than just larger wins? I mean, quite simply, they're just talking rubbish. Thank you.
Writing to our MP is an interesting question. I'll think about that. But to ask him to apologise for crashing the economy, and the government for crashing the economy. I don't think they will actually understand the question, let alone the problem. Let's be absolutely clear. When this country grew greater under the Labour Party than it has grown under the Tory Party, you know you have a problem. And we have a serious problem. The simple fact is that capitalism is based on, well, it's based on a number of premises. One of them is continuous growth. It's part of the reason why, being slightly technical, there's a guy called Kondratiev who worked on the fact that he thought that economies went in a 70 or 80-year cycle. Unfortunately, he wrote that in 1920 and Stalin didn't like it because we were about to go into a recession, so it didn't last long. In the 50s, Skilianism was about boom and bust. And that's because you grow as an economy, you have to, but at a certain point, your growth outstrips either demand or supply. And actually, Victorian times, we were in a recession for most of it. And actually, that's a supply-based recession. The simple fact is that we haven't grown. The only other way of growing is by exploiting resources. Now, the truth about exploiting resources is that in Victorian times, here we're in a supply-side recession, and there, in other countries, there was plenty to exploit, and that's exactly what we did. We exploited other people, other countries, and that meant us we actually did rather well. So I think that we've got a problem now. We have to, in many ways, this could sound really odd. We have too few people to therefore be able to exploit them for growth that way, and certainly too few people within this country. And on the same terms, we don't have the ability to grow because we've actually cut off our single biggest market and we've made it difficult to trade with them. And we were lauding the fact that Rishi Sunak has signed an agreement with the Asian, somewhere in Asia, which will have an impact on our growth of, on our economy of 0.08 of 1%. I thought it was 0.008 of 1, whatever. It's exceptionally small. And that is the problem. We need to grow. I have no idea how we're going to grow. Or we either do it by finding new markets or expanding existing ones, or at the same point, we start exploiting people. And quite frankly, if you exploit people long enough, you end up with all of these strikes that you currently have. The bottom line is you can only underpay people for so long before they start making a problem. Let's be clear in terms of the second question. No matter who stands here or sits here, the vast majority of those people will always be hardworking. However, one of the things that is disappointing is when the attendance of some people is so poor that frankly, you have to be introduced when you see them again. But more importantly, they've had no contribution to any decision. Councils are not about big movements here and big movements there. They're about continuous service to our residents, not for 1, not for 4, not for 10, for 20 and 30 years. You need to provide decent services for your residents on an ongoing basis. So any change you make is incremental, it's small. But the only way to buy into that is to be here and do the work. And it's a great shame when people aren't. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I think we've come to the end of that and it's exhausted everything. So we've come to the next thing now, which is the appointment of a new leader. But I first must ask, Councillor Boyce, are you stepping down from your post?
There is no other way I can put it. It's only correct because the leader does have certain responsibilities. But I'm not standing at the next election, that I submit my resignation now so that there is always a leader in place throughout the election. Therefore, as you say, I resign.
Okay. Thank you. I was going to say all in favour, but that doesn't sound correctly. So can we move on to item 10, please? The appointment of a new leader. Councillor Bolter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Hack as the new leader of the Borough Council.
Have we got a seconder?
Second that.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay, can we put it to the vote then? All those in favour?
Any other nominations?
All those against? Any abstentions?
Okay, Councillor Back now appointed.
Okay. Can we now say then that it has been moved by Councillor Bolter and seconded by Councillor Deeb that Councillor Hack be appointed leader of the council. Congratulations. Would you like to say anything? Councillor Hack? I'll put you on the spot.
I'm going to put on the spot. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all my colleagues for putting their trust in me. It is a great privilege to be the new leader of this great borough. And we are committed to providing excellent services and committed to continuing with the proud history of providing excellent services that our residents are used to. We are also committed to building a borough which is greener, cleaner and safer for all our residents, and a borough where every individual will have an opportunity to prosper and every individual will be proud to live, work and resist. I look forward to working with the officers and with all members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we move on to item 11.
Point of order, Chair.
Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Your Worship. I don't like...
Sorry, I didn't see you.
I've been on this council now for 30 years. We have a leader who's been with us for 17 years and unfortunately he's stepping down. In the 30 years that I have been here, I have seen opposition members come and go and leaders come and go and officers and other members come and go. There has always been a member of the opposition who has had the common courtesy to stand up and say thank you to the officers and to the leader who is stepping down. I haven't seen that today. I'm absolutely appalled that that is not happening. We've spoken about past opposition leaders, Colin Gore, Peter Swift, Peter Upton, Jill Ball. Every single one of them has stood up, David Chappell has stood up and said thank you. Even if they do not agree with what has happened on this side of the chamber, they've had the common courtesy to stand up and make a short statement. I'm ashamed that you sit there tonight and say nothing. And you should be ashamed of yourselves and hang your head. I'm sorry, Your Worship.
They don't know what's happening.
Moving on.
You're not making a response.
No
so
response.
Just move on.
Can we move on now, please?
Thank you, Jim.
Councillor Lloydell. We've got the auditor's annual report and Councillor Kevin Lloydell will introduce this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship.
How do you follow that?
Carefully.
Excuse me. As Chair of the Audit Committee, I am delighted to share with you this report, which asks the committee to note the auditor's annual report. The annual auditor's report details the external auditor's assessment of the council's arrangements for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness. The area of the audit is clearly of utmost importance, even more so in the current economic funding climate councils operate within. This is even more relevant to us, given our financial outlook and current low levels of funding. However, this report confirms that positive progress has and is being made. You will have seen the responses from officers to the 11 improvement recommendations, and I am pleased to say that some of those recommendations have already been implemented and others have started to be implemented. The Audit Committee in the future will monitor robustly the officers' progress on all of these. Great pleasure now to introduce or hand over to Grant Pattison and Paul Harvey from Grant Thornton to talk through their report.
Thank you, Councillor Lloydell. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you tonight. Just as a background, I think I've met some of you, but not all of you, in terms of why I'm here this evening. We audit under the National Audit of Offices Code of Law Practice, and that brought in new requirements actually from the 2021 financial year in terms of doing a more sort of comprehensive and a review of value for money arrangements looking across the whole council. So tonight I'm here to present our findings for 2021, and I'm sure members are aware there's an ongoing challenge within the audit sector around completing audits on time in relation to audits, and we decided that on the basis of the 2021 audit was delayed. We've been through the former leader has mentioned the pandemic, the COVID issues, that it would be better to present a joint report to you about 2021 and the 21-22 financial year. So you have in front of you today a joint report, part of the pandemic, but also, as I'll come on to, we do recognise that during the sort of 2021 financial year and then leading into the setting of the 21-22 budget, there were significant challenges for the council in terms of resourcing and matters around that impacted upon the arrangements for setting that budget and the governance arrangements around that. And as a result of that, we have concluded that, as a basis of that, there was a significant weakness in arrangements in 2021. They have now been addressed through 21-22 and into 22-23. So I'll come on to those in a bit, but that's the reason why we felt doing a joint report was better, because it would give a more complete picture of where the council was and the direction of travel about where it was going. I think interesting when I just quickly go through this. I think some of the things that will resonate with the messages the former leader was given about the council needing to work in partnership with both its members and officers in order, I think, to address some of the challenges in front of that. So I would resonate that. And it is also in line, I think, with Director of Finance's view as well around what needs to happen around savings and elements like that. So I think that does resonate with some of the messages you've already heard tonight. So, as you've heard already, we have presented the annual auditor's report already to the committee. That happened towards the end of January. As I say, overall, we identified one key recommendation coming out of 2021 in respect of a significant weakness, as we would say, as auditors in relation to the arrangements in place for setting the 21-22 budget, including the capital programme. We're satisfied that those were addressed, and you're also self-aware in the sense of you had your own, you brought in after that, the LGA came in and reviewed your own approach to that, so you were self-aware about the challenges around it, and they came up with areas of improvement. So we've looked at that, we concur that, I suppose in a way, there are some technical issues around setting the budget and improvement areas around understanding the full costs that should have been taken into account, setting that budget. You've addressed those and you're moving forward. As I say, we were satisfied that appropriate action was taken in 21-22 to address those findings of the financial project. And a lot of that has been driven by the appointment of a permanent Section 151 officer and strengthening the finance team I'm aware come the summer, there may be some further changes in the finance team and the senior leadership team working on that. From my perspective, it's important that you begin to continue to build on that. You don't lose the knowledge and the foundations that you've now rebuilt effectively from 2021 going forward. So that'll be one of the key things I think the council needs to keep its focus on. And I think in terms of financial sustainability, you had a very clear report taken to you as part of the 23-24 budget setting process around what the position the council was in. You are restricted by your size, and I think I do recognise the fact of the boundaries and the way that the current, I suppose, financing system is structured around the opportunities for you to generate income or make savings. Our overall view is that by building a sort of sustainability plan within the MTFP, you're addressing those matters, and it will be key that that sustainability plan does drive forward the improvement of the savings required. I'm afraid with your auditor, I don't have a magic wand to be able to raise, where we are with funding and the funding mechanism. I know the government over the last few years has continued to say it will look to review the funding mechanism, but that just keeps getting pushed back and delayed. And I don't think you can wait for that to come forward. There was a talk about business rate reform, etc. It's expected, people are looking at it coming, but I don't know what the priorities of the government at the moment. So you have to manage, I suppose, in the now. And that's what we expect the council to be doing. In terms of that, picking up, I suppose, on the budget report, concern of your auditor would be, we've looked at 2021 and 21-22. We haven't done any detailed work on 22-23 and into 23-24, but I do recognise that it's been reported that the reserves, from our perspective, the reserves that you have as a small council, they are difficult for you to maintain, but we do recognise that the report says if you can't change the savings, you can't restructure, you can't do things differently, then those reserves potentially will run out come 26, 27. But I do pick up, I do recognise a lot of councils are in a similar position. A lot of other councils, though, but where you haven't gone down some of the, I suppose, I know it's very easy to say in the press in terms of that, we see the bigger ones like the Forrests of this world and the Croydons of this world. You haven't gone down that line, you haven't done anything that is absolutely sort of looking to generate those commercial returns without having appropriate mechanisms in place. So I think from the council, from my perspective, I think you've been acting responsibly and appropriately, but that doesn't take away the challenges of financial sustainability. Within our report, I think there were two key recommendations that have been highlighted around, ensuring those financial plans are developed and implemented to address funding gaps. That would be a key matter for you to focus upon. And also, as I say, in terms of the sustainability plan, that is key, and I know the Chief Executive now taking responsibility, I think, for delivering that plan along with senior officers. So again, those two things will be key to your continued success as a council. So I thought something on financial sustainability. There's 3 areas we look at: financial sustainability, governance, and then economy efficiency and effectiveness. In terms of governance overall, I say part of governance was the setting of the budget in 2021, but if you put that to one side, you do have appropriate internal controls in place for arrangements to prevent fraud and corruption. You did, I think the LGA, you had a separate peer review by the LGA, which was your decision-making process. It did highlight some areas for improvement, certainly around information being available to members about when they're making decisions. We've reviewed that report and they didn't find any issues around making incorrect decisions, but that's an improvement area. But again, overall, you're taking steps to improve upon that. From our regular attendance at the Audit Committee, we have concluded that the Audit Committee only came back into being 2-3 years ago now, and in terms of that, we can see the development of the Audit Committee and the knowledge and understanding of members upon that. I think we made one minor recommendation about doing a self-review effectively of areas of strength, areas of weakness going forward, to further improve the role of the Audit Committee in line with expectations. And we're satisfied there are effective arrangements in place to monitor compliance with legislation and the regulatory framework. We did identify, I think, some of the financial forecasting did fluctuate quite a lot, both in 2021 and 21-22, in terms of, I suppose, predicting where you might land. We've seen improvements of that in 22-23, but again, that was a recommendation coming out of that in terms of that. And I think picking up on what was heard earlier as well, I think in one area you could look at potentially also would be around, so fully understanding your statutory responsibilities and your discretion responsibilities, so that if you have to make those difficult decisions, you know where those decisions might need to be made in terms of, as unpowerful as they might be to members, but I know you are here to support the community and that's what you want to do, and those discretionary services are probably those ways you want to focus your efforts. Risk management arrangements were reviewed, and they were improved in 2021 and 21-22 going forward. We do think there's scope to improve the format and context of some of the strategic risk register, mainly just linking that more closely to your strategic objectives so you can see which ones are impacted. The areas we did include on improvements were, as a strategic risk register, ensure there's greater transparency in the budget setting process, and that's come through in 23-24. We did say engage with external stakeholders. You did quite a good job in terms of consulting it sort of internally and understanding that. But I think we felt like the external stakeholders that you could potentially engage with them a bit better. Improve the accuracy of the year forecasting. And also, I think we're sort of saying in terms of reporting, you might begin to, if you can, begin to look at improving or bringing relevant service activity and workforce information into those reports, so you understand not just the money, but also how the performance is linked into that. In terms of economy, efficiency and effectiveness, you've got performance reporting in place. That was in place both in 2021 and 21-22. You have had a look at the indicators that you report against, and I think you've taken the view that it's better to have a smaller number reported well rather than a big number, which is a sensible approach to that going forward. I think we did see, and you wouldn't be alone in this sort of limited evidence of benchmarking. It's not always easy to find benchmarking information out there, but it can help you in looking about where your performance with local authorities compares. There was a clear focus on customer service and the authorities moving forward with its performance improvement agenda. I think much of the partnering activity in 2021 was actually driven by the pandemic, and also pandemic was COVID focused, which is fine. And I think, but as we go in now, as we begin to come out of the pandemic, partnership working will continue to be important to you, and it developed in 21-22, and we are satisfied to be able to look at the orders from that. There's been satisfactory stakeholder engagement. So overall, I think we're happy that there are appropriate arrangements in place to manage procurement and also assess expected benefits. So in terms of improvement areas, we'd say periodically we would suggest that you benchmark cost and performance indicators. And one thing we did was around the capital programme. We did find one or two projects where there wasn't a budget, but it was spent. So we were just saying that it really needs to be tightened up. I think it should change through the year, we recognise that, but that would be an improvement area for you to understand and maintain those capital costs. As you've been heard, the recommendations have been accepted by the council. We will be following them up as part of our 2022-23 work, but I'm just going to stop there and happy to take questions.
Any questions? Councillor Charlesworth.
I'm just going to second and reserve my remarks, Chair.
Okay, anybody?
Anybody else? Councillor Hack, did you?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Can I just thank the auditors for their report? I know many that this report is 2020, 21 and 21-22. It's not the current report, it's during COVID times, and many authorities had delayed their reports due to COVID. We acknowledge the recommendations that have been made in this report, and as you mentioned, we have implemented quite a few of them, and we will work with our officers to implement our 5-point sustainability plan and our chief exec to make sure that we keep moving forward with this plan. And we also, we know to bridge the gap in our funding, it relies as much on savings as it does on capital investment. And we will carry on with our ambitious programme of capital investments and keep a close eye on our finances moving forward. Thank you very much for your report.
Have we got anybody else? Okay, can we have somebody to? Councillor Lloyd.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I'll keep my remarks brief. It's essential we have external audit to identify issues that ourselves or our own team don't recognise or pick up. So it's nice to shine a light into those dark corners, and we need to know exactly what's going on and what's not going on. And the only way of doing that is for external audit to come in. We've got an excellent finance team now, both Tracy and Bev are doing cracking work. Sadly, Tracy's going, and I wish her well. Bev's staying forever. But yes, as the new leader has said, it's put us the two COVID years, very difficult times. But we're on the right track, as the auditor said. We need to keep on the right track. I look forward to the next 4 years, should I get re-elected. We'll see what the voters think on May the 4th. But yes, goodbye to Tracy, and thank you for the auditor's report. We are doing remarkably well, I think, and yes, the years ahead will be extremely challenging. We've got to find a solution. There's no option. We deal with this as best we can. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, as chair of the committee, I'm more than happy to move the report as Councillor Charlton is seconded it. But I think it's important to put on record the hard work that these officers have put in to achieve what we've achieved so far. It's important that they recognise the fact that, sadly, local authorities are being targeted from a budget point of view. As it's already been alluded to, if you lose 4 million off your budget, it's like the police, if you like. Since 2011, they lost 38 million being cut. So things have to change. But I'm really pleased that where we are, we should not be afraid of having external auditors in our council. Strengths and weaknesses, it's what we pay them for. It is. And it's all important that we get our head around it so we can make improvements for the future. We take on board and we move forward with those challenges. We contribute towards those challenges. We make fair and contributive assessments of what we can do, what we can't do, and rise to the occasion. It would have been nice if we had support from elsewhere. Good. That's the electorate to decide whether or not their input was worthy of their vote. But it's important, if I may, because to dispel any issues that I would suggest false information that's out there, I will read this out, if I may, because I think it's important for the residents to know. From the point of view of any statutory recommendations, from an audit point of view, we did not make any statutory recommendations. Public interest report, we did not issue a public interest report. Applications to the court, we did not make any applications to the court. Advisory notices, we did not issue any advisory notices. Judicial review, we did not apply to a judicial review. Now that is fantastic, considering what the officers and what the members have to go through to try and balance the books, if you like. And it's important that we send a message out to those residents out there that we are here, we're going to move forward, we're going to face those challenges head on. We're not going to carp, we're not going to point the finger. You have a responsibility when you're elected in this house. And if you come forward in partnership with us, work with us, contribute towards it, this borough will thrive. But if you're constantly in opposition to it, All I can say, you're not in opposition to us. You're in opposition to the residents who put you there, and you're not doing them any favour. You're not doing your job properly. It's as simple as that. So once again, I have to say, if it wasn't for the officers and members working together, finding out solutions, how we can do things, we wouldn't be in this position here today. And I thank the auditors for their honest approach, their detailed approach. It's allowed us to challenge ourselves and be able to move forward in a positive way. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We got any more? No.
It's been moved by councillor Lloyd.
And seconded by councillor Charlesworth that the contents of the report are noted. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Any objections?
Unanimous.
It's unanimous then. Thank you. Can we now move on to agenda item 12, the scheme of members' allowances 2023 to 24?
Thank you, Your Worship. The report asks Council to consider and adopt the Members' Allowance Scheme for 23-24 under the Local Authorities Members' Allowance England Regulation 2003, based on the recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel. The Council is required to have regard to the views of the IRP as expressed in their report each year before reaching a decision on what level of allowance is appropriate, and a copy of the report of the IRP is attached as Appendix 1 for consideration. And in essence, the report says that there will be no change, or recommends no change to the allowances from the current position. Happy to take any questions if required.
Any questions? No?
Move.
Second.
Second, Bill. Okie dokie. So it's been moved by councillor Charlesworth, seconded by councillor Bolter, that the scheme of members' allowance 2023-24 is adopted. All in favour? All against? Any abstentions? Okay, we got note of that. We got all right. Can we move on then, please? Agenda item 13, the Health and Safety Annual Report 2022 to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of the report is to approve the full Health and Safety Annual Report for 22-23 and the revised Health and HS00P1 Health and Safety Policy and Statement. The full Health and Safety Annual Report set out in the appendix is a summary of the Council's health and safety performance during the period 22 to 23. It provides information on accidents, risks, key activities for the last fiscal year and proposals for the next fiscal year. The HS00P1 Health and Safety Policy and Statement, as set out in Appendix 2, has been updated with major modifications, which creates a framework for all service areas to function rather than the previous specific legislative references. The recommendations are that the full Health and Safety Annual Report, as set out in the appendix, is approved, and that the HS00P1 Health and Safety Policy and Statement, April 23, as set out in the appendix, also be approved. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a now tang something on. I'm sure Mr Gill can answer it. Having visited the refuse site the other day, I noticed we've got the lining down the side of the road for people to walk. Are officers content that the sign that's at the beginning of that path is sufficient to deter anybody else from walking down the road, which shouldn't be there, in particular anybody on a cycle? It was an mentioned cycle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bolter. Extensive consultation has taken place with all of the users of that site, i.e. the County Council and the TIP, ourselves, and also the Severn Trent that operate it. We are satisfied that there is sufficient signage on that site. As you're aware, the signage is that there is no public access on foot. There is a right of way over the road, which is set out in the conveyance between all the parties. The County Council's Health and Safety Officer, Severn Trent's Health and Safety Officer, and our Health and Safety Officer have all signed off the signage and agreed that it is sufficient.
Any more questions? Can we have somebody to move the? Councillor Boyce to move, Councillor Bolter to move.
I'll second.
Councillor, okay then. So it's been moved by Councillor Bolter and seconded by Councillor Lloyd that the contents of the report are approved. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Yeah, and we've just got agenda item 14, the schedule of council and allied meetings.
Ball said to deal with this.
You did what?
Mr Ball.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. This report sees members' recommendation for draft schedule of council and allied meetings in the municipal year 2023-24. That recommendation is to full council for adoption and approval at its annual general meeting on the 18th of May. Recommendations are set out at A to D. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question for Clarence. As it's a draft of the schedule of meetings, I take it there can be additions to it. I've noticed that there are no DC pre-meeting scheduled in there at all, so can things be added in? I know it's difficult, I know a lot of work went into this. I just wanted to make sure that before it's fully adopted, it can be altered. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Councillor Bentley. Yes, those additions can be made. It's a draft form recommendation tonight. We'll add those in, and then that will be signed off at AGM on the 18th of May.
Anybody else got any more questions on this? I have somebody then to move the.
Move.
Move, who was that?
Councillor Bentley.
Bentley, and seconder?
Councillor Hack.
Councillor Hack. Okay. So it's been moved by Councillor Bentley and seconded by Councillor Hack that the recommendations set out on page 73 of the agenda be approved. All those in favour? Unanimous?
Yep.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you. We've come to the end of the meeting, but there is just something I would like to say, which is very, a little bit late, but happy birthday, Lily. I hope you've had a lovely day. Thank you. And I now like to close the meeting. Thank you.